You wretched creature. Don't touch what you could never afford. You're lucky the dress isn't ruined. If it were, you'd be paying for it out of a salary you don't deserve.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
She hit her so hard the tea rattled. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The woman in the white apron pressed one hand to her cheek and stared at the floor. The one in the designer dress smiled like she'd won something. She hadn't. The name Nora Calloway meant something in this country. Not in the loud way. Not the kind of famous that fills tabloids or trends on social media. The kind of famous that makes senators pause mid-sentence and lower their voice before continuing. The kind of famous that doesn't need to announce itself because the room already feels it. Nora had built that kind of name over 40 years. After her husband passed, she ran the Calloway estate and business portfolio alone, quietly, without anyone advising her to slow down or step aside. She didn't throw charity galas to be photographed. She funded the charities. She didn't attend every dinner. She decided which dinners were worth attending. Her son, Bryson, was 28. He had his father's wide shoulders and his mother's cheekbones, but none of her caution. He was the kind of man who believed people were good until they proved otherwise, and sometimes even after. He gave too easily. He laughed too readily. He signed checks before reading the fine print and called it trust. Nora had watched that quality carefully since he was small. She called it his greatest weakness and his most lovable flaw. She had spent decades hoping life would sand the dangerous edges off it without breaking him in the process. Then Peyton Ashford walked into his life. She appeared at a gallery opening in Manhattan the previous spring. Standing beside a sculpture she clearly hadn't come to see. Her dress was exactly right. Her posture was exactly right. Her laugh arrived precisely when it was supposed to and stopped before it became too much. Bryson noticed her in under a minute. By the end of the evening he had her number and a look on his face Nora hadn't seen since he was 16 and believed everything. Within 4 months Bryson was completely lost. He sent flowers to her apartment in Tribeca. He rearranged his calendar around her availability. He argued with 2 close friends who questioned her character and stopped returning their calls shortly after. When Nora tried to raise her concerns over dinner one evening, Bryson put down his fork before she finished. "You do this with everyone," he said. "You find the thing wrong with them and decide that's the whole person. I find the thing they're hiding. She's not hiding anything. You're just not used to someone like her. What kind of person is she?" He looked at his mother with something close to pity. "Someone who actually makes me happy. I thought you'd want that." He left before dessert. Their calls shortened after that. When they spoke, both of them were careful. That carefulness hurt worse than the argument. Then an envelope arrived at the Calloway estate. Thick cream paper. Formal handwriting. Sealed with a gold sticker embossed with the initials D.A. Deanna Ashford, Peyton's mother, requested the honor of hosting Nora Calloway at Ashford Ridge, the family's estate in Connecticut, before any public engagement announcement was made. Bryson texted Nora the same morning. "This means everything to me. Please come ready to love them." Nora read the message twice. She set it down. She looked out the window at the garden where the morning light had gone flat and gray. She had handled hard negotiations before. She had sat across from men who wanted to take things from her and smiled while she outmaneuvered them. She knew that the most dangerous rooms were the ones dressed to look welcoming. She thought about what Bryson couldn't see yet. She thought about what she needed to see herself. By evening she had a plan. Not the kind that required lawyers or phone calls. The simpler kind. The kind that required only patience and a plain dress. Ashford Ridge looked exactly like what money does when it's trying to look old. The driveway was perfectly paved. The fountain at the entrance had water that moved just slowly enough to seem elegant. The hedges were trimmed into shapes that required weekly maintenance. Everything was pristine. Everything was recent. Everything was working extremely hard to seem like it had always been there. Nora arrived at the service entrance the morning before Bryson's scheduled visit. She wore a dark cotton dress with no trim, low shoes, a gray cardigan she'd bought at a drugstore 2 weeks prior specifically for this purpose. Her silver hair was tucked beneath a plain scarf. No rings, no watch, nothing that remembered who she was. She told the woman at the service door she was the new help sent from the agency. The woman, who later introduced herself as the estate manager, looked her over for 3 seconds. "You're 10 minutes late." "I'm sorry, the bus?" "We don't explain tardiness here. We correct it. Come." She was handed a white apron and pointed toward the kitchen. The staff inside moved at the pace of people who had learned fear. A young man knocked a tray of glasses and received a sharp word loud enough for 3 rooms to hear. A girl rearranging table linens was told she had the spatial intelligence of a houseplant. No one laughed. Everyone kept moving. Deanna Ashford was at the center of it all. She was a tall woman in pale linen, moving through the rooms the way people move when they believe their presence is a gift. She pointed at everything imperfect. She touched nothing she approved of. When a junior caterer offered her a sample of the canapés, she looked at the tray so long without responding that the caterer actually apologized and carried them away. Nora watched her from behind a cart of folded napkins. She had met this woman's type before. The difference between Deanna Ashford and the genuinely powerful people Nora had known her whole life was this. Genuinely powerful people didn't need the room to feel it. Deanna needed it desperately. Upstairs, Nora was sent to deliver fresh towels to the 2nd floor. She heard Peyton before she saw her. The voice was coming from behind the master suite door, soft and practiced. Nora paused outside, cart still in the hall. "Too hopeful," Peyton said quietly. Then a pause. Then softer. "There. That's better." Nora nudged the door open 2 inches. Peyton stood before a full-length mirror in a cream dress, rehearsing her expression. Warmth, surprise, tender concern. She cycled through them slowly, studying each one, discarding the ones that pushed too hard. A second mirror was angled to show her from the side. She was not getting dressed. She was preparing a performance. A young assistant sat nearby with her phone out, ready to take photos when the lighting was right. Peyton caught the movement in her peripheral vision. She turned. Her face shifted in half a second. The performance vanished. What replaced it was cold. "Leave the towels by the door." Nora left them and walked back down the hall without a word. By noon the house was taut with anticipation. Bryson's car was expected at 1. Nora was assigned to carry a serving tray through the upper hallway toward the sitting room where Peyton would greet him. She moved carefully, the tray balanced with 2 full cups, a small pitcher, and a plate of thin cookies arranged in a fan. The hallway was narrow. She came around the corner the same moment Peyton did. The edge of Nora's shoe caught the hem of Peyton's dress. The contact was barely anything, less than a stumble. The kind of thing that happens in a corridor when 2 people misjudge the same 2 feet of space. The slap landed before Nora fully understood what had happened. The tray tipped. 1 cup slid to the edge and caught. The other didn't. It hit the hardwood floor and the sound cracked through the hallway like something had broken that wasn't ceramic. 2 staff members behind Nora went completely still. Nora pressed 1 hand to her cheek. The skin beneath her fingers burned. Peyton's voice was low and precise. "You're lucky the dress isn't ruined. If it were, you'd be paying for it out of a salary you don't deserve." She stepped over the broken cup and continued down the hall, adjusting her earring as she walked. The 2 staff members behind Nora didn't move for a long moment. One of them, a young woman named Keeley who had been at Ashford Ridge for 3 weeks, stepped forward slowly. Her hands were shaking. She picked up the broken cup pieces without speaking, then looked up at the older woman beside her. "You should say something," Keeley whispered. "You should tell someone." Nora looked at the hall where Peyton had disappeared. "I will," she said. "Just not yet." Bryson arrived at 1:15. He stepped out of a black SUV smiling, carrying a paper bag from a bakery in the city. He had remembered Peyton mentioned once, months ago, that she loved their almond croissants. He'd written it down. He drove 20 minutes out of his way to get them. That was Bryson. Peyton appeared at the front door before the driver had finished parking. She came down the steps the way people come down steps when they know they're being watched. Her voice was soft. She touched his face. She laughed at something he said before he finished saying it. She took the bakery bag and held it to her chest like he'd handed her something rare. She turned to the nervous staff behind her and smiled. You all work so hard. I really see that. The staff member nearest to her blinked, surprised. Bryson watched his girlfriend with the expression of someone who has been told they're lucky so many times they've started to believe it might be true. Nora stood inside the service doorway. She watched Bryson's face as he looked at Peyton. He couldn't see the corridor. He couldn't see the broken cup or the red mark that had faded but not fully disappeared from beneath the edge of Nora's scarf. She had raised this man. She had sat beside him when he had pneumonia at 9 years old and read to him for 6 straight hours. She had driven 4 states for his college move-in day and helped him assemble furniture until 2 in the morning. She had spoken honestly to him when it cost her his approval, because she loved him enough to lose that. He looked right at her from 20 feet away and saw a woman hired to carry trays. That was the moment the plan became an irreversible decision. Not the slap. This lunch was served in the main dining room under recessed lighting and a table set with enough silverware to confuse a museum curator. Nora served quietly. She refilled glasses. She removed plates. She heard everything. Deanna seated herself at the end of the table and spent the first 10 minutes redirecting every compliment back to herself. She praised Bryson's manners and then spent 4 minutes explaining how well she had raised Peyton. She made a joke about old estates being full of sad energy that made Bryson laugh uncertainly. After the main course, the men moved toward the study. Deanna and Peyton drifted to the sunroom off the east hallway. Nora carried a stack of folded napkins past the door left 2 inches open. She stopped. Deanna's voice first. He's easier than I expected. Generous and a little lost. Those two together are basically a blank check. Peyton's voice. He's not lost. He just needs to feel certain. Give him certainty and he'll give you anything. The mother is the complication. She's not a complication. She's an obstacle with a timeline. You put her somewhere comfortable with enough access to gardens and grandchildren to stay busy. She's what, 63? She'll be grateful. A short pause. And the estate? The accounts? Peyton's voice didn't change in any way at all when she answered. You don't take a key from someone who's holding it. You wait until they hand it to you. And they always hand it to you eventually. Deanna laughed. You scare me sometimes. Good. Then, lighter. If she fights it, she'll find out what happens when the whole family agrees she's difficult. Nora walked away from the door. She didn't run. She didn't stop. She found the nearest empty hallway and stood in it for 60 seconds, her back against the wall. Then she took her phone from the pocket beneath her apron. She typed one message to her estate manager. Send the car. Bring Vale. All 3 vehicles. 30 minutes. She put the phone away. She returned to the dining room. She refilled the water glasses. She waited. The sound hit before anyone saw anything. 3 SUVs came up the Ashford Ridge driveway in formation, each one black, each one marked with the silver Callaway crest on both rear doors. They moved like something official, something final. Conversation in the sunroom stopped. Deanna stood and went to the window. Her expression changed immediately. She saw the crests. She started calculating. She began moving toward the front door with the forward momentum of a woman preparing to receive something she believed was owed to her. They've come to formalize it, she said quietly, touching her necklace. Of course they have. Peyton stood beside Bryson, her hand on his arm, her expression warm and composed. The front door opened. 2 assistants entered, then Callaway's senior legal counsel, then 3 household staff. Then Marcus Vale, who had worked for the Callaway family for 22 years, stepped into the main hall. He walked past Deanna without acknowledgement. She reached out one hand, opened her mouth, and he had already moved on. She turned to watch him. He crossed the sitting room. He passed Bryson, who stood straight, confused, trying to read the room. He passed Peyton, whose hand tightened on Bryson's arm, but whose face stayed completely controlled. He stopped in front of a woman in a plain dark dress and a gray cardigan standing near the far wall. He bowed. Mrs. Callaway. The room didn't gasp all at once. Came in layers. First the staff, who went still in a wave. Then Deanna, who grabbed the back of an armchair. Then Peyton, who took one step backward and found the sofa behind her knees. Bryson's face went the color of paper. Nora reached up and unwound the scarf from her hair. The silver came loose cleanly. She removed the cardigan and handed it to an attendant beside her. Her posture shifted. Not dramatically, just completely. She stood straight. The room became small around her. She turned to face the family of Ashford Ridge. Her hand rose slowly and touched the side of her face where the mark had faded but the memory hadn't. "Your daughter," she said, her voice even and unhurried. "Hits harder than she thinks." Deanna's mouth opened. "Your Grace, there has been clarity." Nora looked at Vale. "Please bring forward every member of the household staff who worked this morning." Keely came first. Her hands were clasped in front of her. She did not look at Peyton when she spoke. She described the corridor. She described the cup. She described the words used afterward. She was specific about the tone. For others followed. The caterer who had been dismissed. The assistant who had been called slow. The estate manager who admitted she had been instructed to bring visitors of uncertain standing through the service entrance to keep the front approach looking exclusive. A housekeeper who had overheard a conversation about moving Nora Calloway to a secondary property in a different state under the framing of a thoughtful retirement. Each statement arrived in the room and stayed. Deanna's denials grew shorter. Peyton stopped speaking entirely. Bryson didn't move. When the last staff member finished, Nora turned to her son. He was already looking at her. Not at Peyton. Not at Deanna. Not at the room. At his mother. He walked across the floor slowly. He lowered himself to one knee, and his voice cracked before he finished speaking. "Mom!" Just that word. Just that one word. She looked at him for a long moment. He pressed his hand over his face. "I didn't see it. I know. I told you." He stopped. He couldn't finish it. She didn't finish it for him. Nora delivered the consequences simply. The engagement was over. Bryson would step back from the Calloway holdings for 12 months. He would work directly under estate management. He would learn the names of the people who maintained the property and the operations that depended on it. He would not sit at the head of anything until he had learned what it cost to support it from beneath. The financial instruments underpinning Ashford Ridge, she noted, had been structured through Calloway lending interests. Those instruments would be reviewed and recalled per their standard contract terms. Peyton tried once. "I love him. I want you to know that regardless of anything else." "I know exactly what you wanted," Nora said. "And now so does he." Peyton sat down. Deanna wept. They were the kind of tears that arrive only after every other strategy has failed. Nora observed them with the patience of someone who had seen that exact sequence before. She did not comfort them. She walked to the door. She paused. "Keely." The young woman near the wall looked up. "Come with us." The papers covered it within 48 hours, not through a press release but through the kind of well-placed word that lands harder because it sounds like conversation. Ashford Ridge's financing collapsed within 6 weeks. The estate went to auction by October. Deanna left through the back door on the day the contents were catalogued. Peyton's name circulated through the right circles in the wrong way. She attended 2 events that fall before she stopped trying to attend them. Bryson worked the Calloway estate through winter and into spring. He learned the maintenance schedule of a property 3 times the size of anything he'd managed alone. He learned what the heating system cost and who repaired it. He apologized to both friends he'd stopped calling. They took the calls. Nora hired Keely full-time. She arranged for her to take classes 3 evenings a week. Accounting first, then logistics. Keely was quick with numbers and had better instincts than most people twice her age. One afternoon in April, Nora and Keely walked through the East Garden while Bryson worked with the groundskeeping team on the far side of the property. Keely watched him for a moment. "You could have destroyed them worse," she said. "You had everything you needed." "Yes. So why didn't you?" Nora looked out across the garden, at the roses coming up along the stone wall, at her son moving steadily through work without complaint. "Because the point was never destruction," she said. "The point was truth." Keely was quiet. Bryson looked up from across the garden. He saw them watching. He raised a hand. Nora raised hers back. The ones who mistake silence for weakness, she said, are always the ones most surprised by what silence has been watching. Keely thought about that for a long time afterward. So did everyone who had been in that corridor. A woman nobody noticed had seen everything. And everything she saw, she remembered.